Alrighty. Welcome, Ryan. My name is Garrett Seville. I'm a senior at UC Riverside. I'm a double major in political science and history, and I'm interviewing you today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Would love to. Thanks for having me, Garrett.
Of course.
Ryan Koerner, to give a little college background history, I guess. Graduated from Miami of Ohio back in 2016. Currently with the Staples Center with AEG on the premium service department within our premium seating staff. Have had this role for about a year and a half now. I've been in the sports world for a little under 5 years. Got my start in New York with the New York Mets. Stayed in New York for about the first, like I said, 4 years or so, and then came out here last September to Los Angeles.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, so the first thing I was kind of looking to ask you was, can you briefly describe like your job role, what a day-to-day looks like, what you most enjoy about your role? Just a brief background about what you do.
Sure. A couple of questions thrown in there at the end. That's
Yeah,
fine.
sorry about that.
All good. I'll try to make sure I answer all of them. Primary functions of my role within the premium seating department is primarily on the service end. So to service some of our high-end clients, corporations, Fortune 500 companies, top down. Of course, most of us have been inside of an arena. So the premier areas, our suites, our lounges. If you watch any of the games at Staples Center, Lakers, Clippers, Kings, those lit up sections that the TVs will usually show, those are our San Manuel lounges. Naturally, we have 3 different suite levels. And of course, the premium seating locations we've got within and inside of Staples Center. That's what I manage on a day-to-day. Of course, our clients are usually using those seats more often than not for client entertainment, as well as overall business development. I'd say the favorite part of the job is unfortunately working there during the games in person.
Yeah.
You're really able to connect with their clients, some of their top end investors, but more importantly, you're just able to connect with people. And I think that's the best part of this job, because you get to see how you yourself as the individual handles an environment like that when it's a business like setting inside of sports. Few can say that that's their day-to-day functionality and role. So recognizing that I have a much different 9 to 5 that isn't a 9 to 5, unlike everybody else, is something I've cherished and enjoyed since day one. And especially right now, being almost at a year in this pandemic, it's going to be something I even cherish more so once we're back.
Yeah. When you say 9 to 5, most games are at night. So would you say more like 12 to 9 shift, or like how does
It's
that work?
so every team, every organization is going to handle it differently. I've done the 9 to 11, where you're in the office maybe even before 9 a.m. and you're not
Wow.
out of the arena until 10:30, 11. Sometimes hockey games can go really long. Sometimes basketball games can go pretty long as well, depending on how many fouls. But
Yeah.
there have been times where, if you're working a lot of shifts at Staples Center in particular, we'll do a staggered crew. I think we're going to do more of that now once we're back. But there's been the occasional start at 1 p.m., finish at 11:30, and then there's been usually the more often than not the show up at 8:30, 8:45, leave at 8:45, 9:30 at night, and you get a 12-hour day. And so that's our industry. Anyone you talk to that's been in this field for a few years will say, yeah, I've had my fair share of 12-hour days. I mean, it's fun though. You usually aren't coming home after a 12-hour day and you're like, damn, today sucked.
Yeah, I mean, because you get to watch the game for the most part, right?
You'll have the ability to enjoy yourself for a few quarters, periods, whatever it may be.
Yeah. At least see some of the game in person.
Right.
Kind of leads me to my next point. When you were like growing up, or like currently, like who was your like favorite athlete? Like who are you looking up to? What's the mentality?
Geez. I think for
Like who?
me, I had a fandom towards, players that did great on the field, but also did great things, off the field or off the ice. There's so many that I can't really pick one or two that'll come to mind, but
No
uh,
worries.
I think for me, that was the mentality is you got to be a hard worker. You have to have a passion for your craft. I think that's something I've heard since day one in this industry, and I'm not on the hiring side or even the, management side yet. But that's stuff you hear every single day. So you got to have a passion for your craft. You have to be coachable. I mean, most of us have probably, if you're working in the sports industry, whether it was at the collegiate level, the high school level, or if you were bad enough at sports to where your parents were like, "Hey, after middle school, we're just going to stop." You've had some experience in sports, so you've worked with a team, you've learned how to become coachable, but the passion for your craft is always going to be the number one thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of see that through your work ethic from what I can see right here. Like you have a passion for your craft so far through this interview.
Thank you. It's something that you develop over time, and I'm sure once you're in the sports industry as well, you'll see yourself develop year over year. It has been nice to see um, my jump and my leap, at least in the first 5 years, because I can remember the struggles early on for sure.
Yeah. Now that you've gotten to this point, like what would you say is your greatest highlight?
I would say being able to prove some people wrong has been my greatest highlight. There were times in my earlier years in the industry where you're going to get told no a lot. And it's how you handle the no that you can move forward. There were at least a couple of times in my first job right out of college where, with that particular sports club, I wanted to be there long term. And to be blunt, they didn't necessarily see me fitting in long term, even though they loved who I was as the individual. So I really did take that to heart and said, if I can do this on my own and I have accountability and faith in myself, maybe someone else will recognize that side of me and say, we're going to take that chance or we're going to take that risk and look at it as an opportunity. Um, the individual in the company that hired me at that point, I've been working for that said person for the last 4 years. So sometimes it is beneficial to bet on yourself in our industry, but at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it comes back to being, having the passion for your craft and saying to yourself, I know this is what I'm meant to do, or I know I'm good enough to be in this industry.
Gotcha. Based on your path so far, like I don't like the word regret because I don't think people should have regrets. I think a lot of things happen for a reason. Would you do anything differently? Like, would there be anything you like to do over, just do differently?
I definitely would want to do over my entire first 6 months of working in the industry. There's so many times where, fresh out of college, you think you know everything. You don't. Don't let me fool you. And there's moments where I wish I could tap myself on the shoulder and just say, this will help you more than you know now. And you just have to trust this process. You just have to believe in what's being shared, what's being told to you, what you're trying to understand and comprehend. Maybe doesn't make sense to you now, but it will. I think for myself, those were the moments and those are the times that I go back and think on a lot and say, yes, those failures have led to successes here in the now, but I would still say, oh yeah, I'll go back and change the first 6 to 8 months of my sports career because I know if maybe I'd fixed and changed those first 6 to 8 months, we might be talking to Ryan Koerner in New York as opposed to out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Um, After those 6 to 8 months, like, did you start developing like character traits and skills that have been more helpful to you now, or like, if that
Yes.
makes sense, like what skills have been most useful for you?
I would say, keeping an even mentality, not taking the wins too high, not taking losses too hard. That's something my parents always shared with me, especially in sports, but just in life in general. Take the wins, take the losses, treat them the same. Learn from both. You can't necessarily move on without having some L's on your record. You won't get anywhere without having some wins on your record. So I mean, it is like a game, that's
Yeah.
life. I think a lot of the things that I still reflect on now, it is back to that process. Like, here's how something's going to happen, especially now in my role within our premium space. No one account is the same. No one person is the same within each corporation that you deal with. So, every single case is its own individual case, which means there's its own individual solution. The same solution may work multiple times, but it's going to take you a different path to get there. So I think recognizing every single situation is unique and it's its own situation. You're going to have its own solution as well. So I would say those are the two biggest talking points and things that I've taken, especially from when I learned in my failures to now applying them here in year 4, year 5.
Um, this is kind of just like an interest question. Like, what was the moment when you were like, wow, I made it? I mean, obviously you're not done going up to through the hierarchy. Like, what moment were you like, wow, like I work in sports, I made a dream come true?
I would say now. I remember for a good portion of my college career, I wanted to work in New York. Being from Pittsburgh, and knowing how big of a hub New York City was and still is. Um, for me, that was the landing spot. That was the dream spot. It was actually with MSG, where I did have an interview early on as an inside seller for there. Of course, didn't get that opportunity and wasn't deterred to continually look and think to myself, one day MSG, one day MSG. But my path led me here to Los Angeles. And of course, the MSG of the East, or the MSG of the West, I should say, is Staples Center. So
Yeah.
interesting how I had my eyes solely fixated on one specific arena, where I didn't think to myself, you know what? MSG isn't the only MSG like place in the country. So my most proud moment by far was definitely being able to come out here. Um, you could take Ryan Koerner from 2016. He never would have said 5 years into his sports career, he would have gotten 4 years in New York and then moved out to Los Angeles on a whim.
Mhm.
Pretty much landed on his feet within 16 to 18 months. And I mean that genuinely. I did not think I'd be out here as quickly as I did. So, um, like I said, sometimes you got to bet on yourself and just be confident in the path.
Yeah, and I kind of liked that phrase, like betting on yourself. Like, would you have any advice, like for any college students that are attending this showcase conference? Do you have any like tips, advice, anything you want to throw out there for the students?
Yeah, I think I'll go two main things, especially recognizing I am in this interview speaking to students that hopefully are going to be in my shoes 5 years from now, but more importantly, getting opportunities to get in front of hiring people and people of hiring positions in the sports world. You have to be yourself, and you have to be confident in who you are. Selling is not difficult. It's about being comfortable with who you are and understanding the process. You're going to get taught the sales process if you're hired in this industry. That's the one mistake that I made in the beginning of my career, was thinking I knew more than I did. And I know now that I didn't. And for everyone that's watching this, go in there with an open mind. If you can take care of being confident in who you are, that's half the battle. And if you've won that battle, you can go right in day one and be like, okay, I'm going to learn everything I can. I'm going to believe in everything that's being told to me. I'm going to leave my personal opinions out of it. And within the first 6 to 8 months, you're going to be completely changed. You'll see a 180 in yourself. You'll still be that confident, passionate person in the industry. And then the second thing I would add to is, in these interviews, in these questions that you'll have, treat them as conversations. I recognize, especially now, a lot of these are going to be not face to face. So there isn't the ability to personify your personality to someone through a Zoom, through a Teams, whatever it may be. but continually make sure you're thinking to yourself, yes, this is an interview, but let's try to make it conversational. Let's try to connect with the person that might become my potential manager, that might be hiring me 2 weeks from now saying, hey, Garrett, I appreciated our conversation we had. It felt like a conversation to me, even though it was supposed to be an interview.
Yeah.
I think if you're able to do those two things, especially knowing my hiring experience is light years different from what every college student's going through now, that would be the advice I would give is continue to stay confident in who you are and keep that persona. And at the same time, in these interviews, really try to make it conversational with the person that's interviewing you, because I know what goes on after the interview with the college student. I understand the behind the scenes process,
Hmm.
and that behind the scenes process for you, that moves you to the top. If you have that ability to take a conversation, flip it from an interview to being a, hey, I just spoke to this gentleman or young lady for 15, 20 minutes. I didn't even ask them all of the interview questions because it was a conversation and I loved every second of it. Those moments will stick. I promise those moments will stick.
Alrighty, well, that kind of concludes our interview for today. Any kind of closing remarks you want to give, or pretty much wrap up?
I would say to everyone that's watching this, best of luck. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions or want to get, one-on-one conversations going like Garrett and I did. I did not have a lot of help in my college career finding my way into the sports industry. Of course, that's why I'm super passionate about helping out future young, successful businessmen and women like myself. So if anyone has questions or more importantly, just wants to connect on LinkedIn, by all means, please do so. I am happy to help foster the next wave.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate it. Enjoy the conference next weekend and all the best.
Alrighty.
Take care.